What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm one of your hosts for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V.
And I'm the other co-host on this episode, Kodey Stauffer.
And on this episode, we are continuing our top 5 seniors position player series here. One of our oldest series, actually. We've done it since 2020, starting with that class of 21. Now we're in the class of 24 here. And on this episode, we are going to be evaluating middle linebackers. And so this one's always an interesting one because everyone's always asking, what about this person or this person? The way we classify linebackers or middle linebackers is that usually they're not lined up, on the edge, and they're lined up closer to the middle. So think like 3-4 middle linebackers, any 4-3 linebackers as well. Think those kind of players who are not going to be rushing over the edge, but are moved around quite a bit there. So that's how we're going to classify them by. And when we do our rankings here at Playmakers Corner, this is how it's going to work. Myself and Kodey, we each individually rate each player from a scale of 1 to 10 in 10 different categories, which are man coverage ability, zone coverage ability, hit power, top end speed, agility, hip fluidity, that's 1, height/frame, tackling, pass rush skills, block shedding ability, run defendability, and then we add all of that up and we get our overall grade for each player there. Just in case you don't know how our ratings go, if we give a player a rating from 1 to 3, that means they need improvement. 4 to 6 is about an average skill there. 7 to 8 is above average to good. Once you get to that 8 range, you're closer to a 3-star. High 7s, closer to a 2-star talent in that specific skill. 8 to 9, that's our 3-star to 4-star range / good to great range. So a lot of I guess, how should we say this, nuance in that little range there. And then 9 to 10 is very good to elite. Think 4-star to 5-star range if you get that rating for each and every skill. And that kind of goes the same with our overall ratings. Like if you're rated at an 80, you're about a 3-star. High 80s are 4-star. And then if you get a 9, or if you're a 90 overall, then you're a 5-star. So just wanted to make sure to put all that out there. And so myself and Kodey do that individually, and then we go ahead and average out our grades. We add his grade and my grade together and divide it by 2, in case you don't know what average means. And then that's our PMC grade. And so our number 1 player would be our highest average grade, number 2, second, and so forth and so forth. Kodey, is there anything else you want to add on to the process here of how we do these things before we hop into it?
Yeah, I just want to shout out that, we do watch a ton of film, and I know a lot of people will also be like, well, hey, so-and-so had 130 tackles. Does that not mean anything? And it's like, well, we watch the film, and we assess the quality of those tackles too. So, numbers don't rule everything in this, stats-wise. It's what is on the film, and what have we also seen in person. We've seen a ton of these players play live, whether it was this year or their junior year, a lot of these guys being a multi-year starter. And so I just want that to be abundantly clear that, it's what's on the film, and we're watching this the way that scouts will watch this, and we're watching it even a little bit more in depth because, a lot of scouts will not watch past the first 30 seconds if they don't like what they see. So whereas we are watching through multiple videos of, their highlight reels and things like that, and multiple games as well as attending games and stuff like that to get a full evaluation. So I think that is just worth mentioning because every year it's like, oh, so-and-so led state in tackles or in assists or in this, that, or the other. And, well, quality of numbers means something, especially at this position.
Yes, and speaking of quality, we also went ahead and evaluated the top 2 linebacker prospects in the country in Justin Williams, who's committed to Georgia, and Sammy Brown, who's committed to Clemson. Sammy Brown, I think, also playing in Georgia as well, and we know some people who actually got to play against him, so there is that as well. To kind of help compare and give a baseline of where these players compared to some of the best in the entire country, because we don't want to get, washed by that Colorado bias. Isn't that right, Kodey?
Yes, sir.
And so, with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into our number 5 overall linebacker in the class of 2024, and that is Mullins AJ Guida here. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but he's the 6'2", 220-pound linebacker. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the strengths, his highest ratings actually, and what skills those were for him here. So I gave him an 8.5. That was his highest grade in agility, hip fluidity, height/frame, and tackling. Let me talk about the frame first. 6'2", 220. I mean, I feel like he's pretty legitimate there, maybe even a little bit taller as well, but definitely at that weight. And I absolutely love his athleticism blended with this frame here. I mean, his agility, he is real fluid and whatnot. I like the way he moves. He's extremely smooth. Definitely something, an athletic skill that will translate to the next level. Him just being so smooth and being able to cover sideline to sideline there. That's absolutely what I love. I also really love his tackling as well. I mean, he is a very sound tackler, takes great angles, knows how to play the run pretty well as well here. And so there you go there. Those are the things I really like about AJ Guida here. He's a pretty tall, like good frame linebacker that has good athleticism and plays the run well here. Kodey, what are some things you like about him, / maybe some things you might want to see him improve on moving forward?
Yeah, so when talking about AJ here out of Mullen High School, that's just down the street from me, by the way. You know, there's a few things I really like. Obviously, his height and frame being a very legit, 6'2", maybe even 6'2.5", 3, 220. I mean, he's the second heaviest guy in the top 5 here. And I mean, a lot of the linebackers here in Colorado kind of feel like they're almost topped off at like 200 pounds. So it's good to see, him play at this weight and play very well at this weight as well. I think that, his run defendability is something that jumped off the film to me here at an 8.4. And that was also matched by his ability to drop the hammer as well. I also have that at an 8.4. He fills lanes and he fills them very aggressively. And that's something that just, jumps right off the film for you and is something that I definitely enjoyed watching. And then, I also think that he's very solid in pass coverage. I was a little surprised just because his numbers don't necessarily pop off the screen. But when you watch the film, it's because why would you throw it in his direction? He does a great job of passing off receivers to other zones. He does a great job as well as, lining up in the slot at times, typically against tight ends, but also following running backs out of the backfield. He does a great job keeping up both in man and zone, in my opinion. And, to be able to do that is not super common, I would say, for, every single linebacker. I think that the linebackers that can play against the pass are the ones that definitely separate themselves in this top 5 list because, I mean, as the game continues to trend towards passing the ball, you need those guys to be able to play against these crazy tight ends that are super fast and big and be able to keep up at least through zones with some of these wide receivers and especially with these running backs that continue to be great pass catchers. You cannot have mismatches out there, and AJ checks all of those boxes. I also think that he does a great job, in zone. He bumps receivers off their routes with ease with his strength and, playing within the confines of the rules as well. So that's something else that I like to see that throws off the timing and whatnot of quarterbacks. And yeah, I think that he just flips his hips pretty well. His agility / hip fluidity, I have it an 8, which is pretty solid. And I think that he does a lot of that very well. He drops the hammer very hard. I have his hit power at, like I said, an 8.4. So, and that happens to receivers. He forces incompletions like that. And, also inside the box, he does a great job of dropping the hammer against running backs and stuff like that. So those are the things that I like. There are a couple of other things that, like I said, man coverage at an 8, agility / hip fluidity at an 8. His tackling, I have it an 8.2. So lots of 3-star looks here. Coach V, if you want to go ahead and take over and talk about, just some things that you kind of agree with in that assessment and then maybe some things that you want to see him work on in the offseason.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. I do want to go ahead and double down on what you had to say about him being able to pass off receivers. He does a really good job, and he covers, like I said, just sideline to sideline so well. And so if a quarterback's rolling out, he's going to be able to pace with them pretty well. And whatever receiver that is rolling out with the quarterback pretty well as well there, he's just a guy that's going to get in there. He's just a guy that's going to cover sideline to sideline really well, and that helps him out covering his zone and whatnot. And he switches directions pretty seamlessly too. That's something that I really want to note there. So there you go. Now, moving into some other things here. So my lowest grades here for him was a 6 in both pass rush skills and block shedding ability. Look, there's some things that we're just not going to be able to evaluate because they're not utilized in that position. But even in the rare opportunity that they are, maybe there's just not a lot there. And that's kind of how I feel about pass rushing skills there. I mean, they're not really asking him to blitz a whole bunch, but just in general, he's not going to, be a great edge rusher off the edge or someone who's going to be a absolutely great blitzer unless he's just completely unblocked, And so I gave him a 6 there. It's about average, right? He has good athleticism where he's going to slip a couple guys on a blitz and, be able to be disruptive. But if he's picked up, I don't know how much pressure he's actually going to get, which is what matters there. Now, speaking of getting picked up here, block shedding ability gave him a 6. I just didn't love how he, reacted to getting blocked. And, how he was against the linemen who got their hands on him. I don't know. I think he needs to get stronger he definitely needs to get stronger, but I also think he needs to add a little bit more of a bag to his block shedding ability. Would love to see him use his hands more, get extension, not be afraid of getting down and dirty, pulling your hands into someone's chest pads and just being able to manhandle them a little bit more here and, have more control of when they shed a block rather than kind of just waiting around here and trying to look for an opening to evade a blocker, which, may or may not result in more yards than if you got in there, got a good push on the blocker, and then was able to shed afterwards as well and have enough strength to do that. And I just didn't see a whole lot of that. Most of the time with AJ here, when he is trying to get around blocks, he's just using his athleticism, right? Very minimal contact, in my opinion. And when he does, take on some contact, just not the greatest fan, just doesn't create a huge push there. And that's definitely a little bit of an issue. You need guys who can not only hold their gap, but be able to push back a little bit on that gap. Isn't that right, Kodey?
Yeah, no, the lowest scores for me were also his block shedding ability and his pass rush skills. And the exact words that I use is he doesn't have a bag when block shedding or pass rushing. So I just don't think that there's a lot of, there's no moves, really. And there's not a ton of creativity at work, and there's not a lot of instinct to do any of those things. Now, he still received a 7.4 in pass rush and a 7 in block shedding, and that's because, his footwork does a lot for him when avoiding blockers and whatnot. But, you do have to get off of blocks using your hands and arms at some point, so that is definitely something that he does need to work on. And then his pass rush skills, at a 7.4, he kind of earned some marks from that just because of the versatility that he kind of does have whenever he does pass rush. He could do it on blitzes. He can do on delayed blitzes. He could go off the edge. And I think that he also does a great job of transitioning from pass coverage into rushing the quarterback. There are a few times where he just makes the right decision, looking at his film where it's all right, well, no one's in my zone and I'm flowing with this guy, so I'm just going to go light him up. And, he makes it count anytime he does get those opportunities. But I would not use him in a traditional pass rushing sense. Definitely more in, I would say, the traditional middle linebacker pass rushing sense. At least what we see and whatnot. But his versatility does take some dings there for me as well, scoring a 7.4 in that area and a 7 in block shedding ability. And when you add all my scores up, that does put him at an 80.5. And with Coach V, I believe you have him at a 76.8, making him a 78.65 overall prospect for us. And yeah, I think that that's pretty accurate. 2 stars knocking on that 3-star kind of window.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, the biggest thing going for him is that he's 6'2", 220, and he's athletic, right? And so when you have a guy like that, as a college coach, you really feel like you can mold him into any kind of linebacker you want, as long as he has some of those basic skills like tackling, defending the run, stuff like that. And then, the basic zone coverage stuff as well, as that is asked from a linebacker. And so, honestly, he's a little bit of a raw prospect, right? But the athleticism there and the frame's there. And so, with that being said, Kodey, why don't you go ahead and talk about his commitment here?
Yeah, so AJ here is committed to play at Northern Illinois University. This is a pretty solid university when it comes to, football. I mean, they have a ton of MAC titles as recently as 2021. This year, they will be playing in a bowl game. And, they're still FBS, too. So, they're a group of 5, and I think that's right where AJ belongs, honestly, is, a solid group of 5. If he was going FCS, I think that he would see the field a little bit sooner, but I kind of like that there's not a ton of pressure for him to come in and help this team, turn around or anything like that. He's somebody that I think can be very dangerous, in 2 years. And the crazy thing is that he's only going to get bigger. I mean, by the time he's getting snaps on this level, I think that there's a very strong chance that he's 230 pounds. And if opposing teams decide to throw a slant, they're putting the receiver's health at risk to making a decision like that. And so I think that it's a good fit for AJ here. I think it's right about where we have him, as far as assessed is, with that athleticism being capable of being a D1 guy. So, I think that it's a good fit, honestly, at NIU. And what's kind of your 2 cents on it, Coach V?
Yeah, so they're a good school when it comes to developing linebackers, in my opinion, especially underrated ones. They've sent a couple guys to the league here. AJ, I think, fits that defense really well here. I had him more of a, FCS guy to maybe D2 here, and I had him rated that way mostly because of the potential here. I think his ceiling is really up there. The thing that we just got to look out for is that, okay, well, in 2 or 3 years, say he's around closer, hopefully he's over 230 in 2 or 3 years. I would say if he's in that 6'2", 240 range, how does that speed blend with the power, strength, and weight, right? Is it still there? And if it is, then, we're cooking, and I think there's a lot of potential for him to be a starter for that squad, hopefully one day, or at least a good rotational guy. Now, if it doesn't quite work out, then I think he's still a good rotational guy that you could throw out there, a good backup who will challenge, teams on, or I guess players on the starting offense, and will get in there when you need him to on special teams or defense or in some specific situations, right? He'll fill a role there at the very least here at 6'2", 220 being his floor. But I think the more intriguing thing is definitely his ceiling here, which is why, he did get this offer from Northern Illinois, right, Kodey? And is committed there.
Yeah, no, I think that the upside is definitely there, because he is raw in some aspects, but I mean, the athleticism and the size are, as we say, things that you can't necessarily coach. And, if those things continue to trend, it's all going to be good news here. So that is AJ Guida from Mullen. Coach V, are we ready for me to take over and talk about this number 4 linebacker on this list?
Yes, go ahead. We actually saw him play live this last season.
In one of the best games of his season 2, which is crazy to say because he had so many memorable and signature games and moments, and that is Denver East's very own Landon Holloway, linebacker / athlete here for, like I said, Denver East, and honestly, just a pass coverage guru here. And with that being said, I'm just going to jump into the strengths and the things that I like, and a lot of them were kind of near the top of this list here. I mean, zone coverage ability and top end speed, both at 8.8. I mean, at 5'11 to, well, it says 215 on his Twitter, but maybe closer to 205 playing weight. You would expect somebody to play really fast, but even compared to other guys that are this size, which there are plenty at the linebacker position in Colorado, his speed really just is different. I mean, he takes great angles. He can play against wide receivers in the slot, like truly, and it does not look like a struggle for him. And he was tasked to do it against some of the better slot receivers in the state, I would say, and receivers that are built for kind of that role. So he did a great job in those situations, especially zone. He does a great job of baiting quarterbacks into thinking that receivers are open and then just using his speed to break on the ball. But I also think that, zone coverage-wise, he does a great job playing sideline to sideline, and, that ability with that speed allows him to play the entire field. And, that includes, up the sidelines. If routes go up that way and he has, you can ask him to play, quarter sideline zones and whatnot. And that is crazy to think from a linebacker, honestly. And his ball skills in zone coverage are absurd. I mean, there's just so many times where a receiver does genuinely look open, but by the time the quarterback winds up, Landon has already made his play and is going to pick off that football. So I think that, his instincts as well carries over really, really well in his athleticism. He's also a big impact guy on special teams, and I think that, his speed and athleticism plays a huge role in that. His agility/hip fluidity for me is at an 8.7. He moves very, very well. And yeah, I think that all of that combined with, even in his smaller frame, he is able to drop the hammer. I mean, I gave him a 9 actually in hit power just because there are the most jaw-dropping hits on his highlight reel. And when he does get his chance to really just wind up, he will flatten somebody. And, to be able to do it at that size and do it against players that sometimes are even bigger than him, like tight ends and whatnot, that means a lot for that grade for me. And I think that on top of that, combined with his tackling, he's very consistent. I think that he does a great job of, keeping a very consistent low pad level on his tackles. I think that, this is a great all-around modern linebacker that we're looking at in Landon Holloway, athleticism and speed-wise. Coach V, I know that we see basically eye to eye on this prospect and what his strengths are, but I still want to hear you put it down the way that you see it and what you were seeing in that game that we saw live.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely agreed with everything you said here. Landon Holloway is a Swiss Army knife was a Swiss Army knife for Denver East here. Got to look at his film a lot here in the preseason when looking for guys for our watch list there. And he was someone who really stood out, He played extremely well his junior year and followed that up with a great senior year here. I want to talk about his zone coverage ability here because I gave him an 8.5. That's one of his highest grades here, along with run defendability, which I gave an 8.5 to, and tackling at an 8.6. But talking about his zone coverage ability, the thing that separates him from other guys here, like an AJ Guida and some of our honorable mentions, is his spatial awareness and just awareness in general when playing zone. He, like you said, Cody, he baits a lot of quarterbacks into throwing towards him because he's just so aware of okay, this is how far I could play over until I gotta come over, or this is how far I could play over until I'm at my limits and I'm not able to make a play on the ball, and at the very least cause a breakup. And in that Denver South game, one specific play that'll always stick out to me was when he dropped back into, I'm pretty sure it was a zone here, and then there was a play in the flats, and he kind of stayed, as close as he can, without, playing that flat super close. And then he booked it right when he knew that quarterback was checking down there and had an excellent interception that was beautifully timed there. And, that's just spatial awareness and football instincts that sometimes you just can't teach. He has a nose for the football and just does an excellent job making plays. Whether it's causing turnovers, making big hits, filling on the run and whatnot. Just has a great nose for the football, and you love to see it here from him here at 5'11", 215. Kind of a smaller guy, right, but still finding a way to get it done. And I really want to talk about, his growth from junior to senior year, because his junior year, you kind of saw some of those spurts. His senior year, it just really all came together. And so you absolutely absolutely love to see that development from Holloway, who has really turned into a great middle linebacker here. Someone that you could ask to pretty much do anything, and he will understand it and go get it done and fit the scheme. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more or what much more you could ask from him, but Kodey, if you don't mind here, do you mind if I talk about some of his lower grades?
Yeah, go for it.
So, his lower grades, it's not that bad. I gave him a 7 in man coverage ability, a 7 in block shedding ability, and a 6 in pass rush skills. Let me talk about pass rush skills. That's another one where they don't really ask him to come off the edge too much, especially when they have talented edge rushers like a DJ Crow over there who's, doing his thing. And so most of the time he's real like, hey, he's going to play the run, he's going to play zone, maybe man up with somebody as well and be used more that way. And so as far as pass rushing goes, he's just not used a lot. But, just being honest, he is the shortest guy on our top 5 to make it at 5'11-ish, 215. He does kind of have a smaller wingspan, so that does make pass rushing just naturally tougher for him to do. And for him to, I guess, really make up for that, he's going to have to get quicker, and he's going to have to get stronger, and have a stronger core as well when pass rushing. And I just don't know if that's just a very realistic thing to ask from somebody of his skill set and of his frame. So there you go there. Now, let me move on to block shedding ability here. Gave him a 7. He's not afraid of, engaging and, getting physical and whatnot. That's definitely something he's not afraid of. And there are times where he's able to get up in there, hold his ground and then go make the tackle, block shed and go make the tackle. But like I said, he just does have some smaller, arms and a wingspan there. And so the reach is just not quite there sometimes. And so the block shedding is sometimes a struggle. And so if the play is not going outside or at an angle where he could just latch off by running sideways and outrunning his blocker, then he's going to struggle to get off the block. And that's something I kind of saw a lot here. He's also a little bit lighter at 215, 210. And so there are times where he just kind of gets lost in the sauce in that mix with guards getting in there and pulling and lead blockers and whatnot. Against Pine Creek, that is kind of something you saw a lot there with Kai Goetze being their lead blocker at tight end. There are some struggles there with some of the pulls and whatnot. And so with that being said, I don't know how much more you can improve on that with his overall frame, but I just would love to see him continue to get stronger to improve on his block shedding in general. And I think that'll go a long way. And then, I gave him a 7 for man coverage ability. He can do it. I just think there are times where it's a little raw or he gets a little too grabby at times. And so, it is what it is, but it's not the worst for sure there. But Kodey, what do you think about some of my criticisms here? And, what are some things that you like to see for him to work on here?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, and that's going to be because pass rush skills and block shedding ability were not rated very high. I mean, he isn't asked to do it a whole lot, but I think that his frame and strength definitely holds him back on that. I mean, block shedding wise, I still have it at a 7 just because with his speed and athleticism, he can avoid blockers really, really well, even better than our, last guy that we talked about here. And so I think with his agility, he's able to make plays in the backfield with his speed and, timing and stuff like that. And that doesn't have as much to do with, really being able to get to the quarterback or get off of blockers or anything like that. And I think that, I would like to say that his size does not impact really any of his other categories that much compared to how much I think it does impact his ability to block shed or pass rush. I could maybe see sending him on a blitz off the edge or something along the lines like that, but it's just hard to, really sell out on that, especially if he just becomes a non-factor. I'd rather have him back in an ability to make plays on the pass than risk him being zeroed out on, a blitz where he potentially could get ate up. So that's kind of where my analysis is at for Landon. I mean, I don't really know how many other ways we can word it, Simon.
Well, let's go ahead and transition a little bit here. Before we move on to college interests and stuff like that, I do want to just go down the line and make sure I get all my grades. And like I said, 7 for man coverage ability for Landon here, 8.3 for hit power, 8.2 for top end speed. Gave him a 8.4 for agility, hip fluidity, 8.1 for frame there. And then I think I already went over the other ones. 8.5 for run defendability. Altogether, I mean, he's a great athlete with a good skill set, could play the run relatively well here. I gave him a 78.6. Kodey, what was your overall grade? And do you want to go ahead and talk about, I guess, his future and some of his college interests and where he projects moving forward?
Yeah, no, I think that he definitely got dinged a little bit for height/frame, pass rush skills, block shedding ability. But I mean, with 8s in basically everything else, he came out to a 79.7. And, you know, between the two of us, that is a 79.15 composite score. And when I'm looking at his offers and whatnot, you know, it's really interesting. So he has a D1 offer to Drake University, who, you know, we've become somewhat familiar with as far as Colorado recruiting and talent goes and whatnot. And, you know, I will say, in addition to that, he was selected to play in the Blue-Gray All-American Bowl, but not too many other D1 offers outside of that, really. And I'm not seeing a lot of, like, D2 offers, if I'm being completely honest, just looking through his recruiting and whatnot. So that's kind of where it's at, but, you know, I'm assuming if Drake's looking at him, he probably has a couple of other D2 looks. I mean, he was invited to, you know, a game at CU, which was pretty interesting, and then as well as CSU Pueblo, and it's also been notated that he is a Big Sky conference target as well. So I'm not sure who that means. I mean, I know who we want it to mean from an alumni standpoint, but that's kind of where his recruiting is at. Coach V, let me reset here. That feels a little slow to me, honestly, with the numbers and the athleticism that he's putting up. And, you know, I think that versatility-wise, I think that Landon's an interesting prospect for more than just the linebacker position, which I think should help his recruiting a little bit more than where it's at. Why do you think it's slow, and what do you think of that assessment that, you know, maybe you can use Landon in more ways than one?
Yeah, well, I agree that he's a versatile player. I mean, he played linebacker in high school, obviously. But when it comes to recruiting, I mean, he's 5'11", 215. If just looking at, you know, the national scale of things, that's the size of a safety, pretty much. You know, unless he's just a real hard-hitting guy or, you know, could get real physical and has a little bit more power, has some of that wrestling power where they're stronger than their weight is at, then, you know, it kind of is what it is. People, I would imagine some college coaches view him as just kind of a bigger safety, which I think he can play safety. I just don't know how fast he is going to be top end wise on the back end of things. He's probably a 4.6 guy, which is definitely on the slower end. But, you know, he's somebody that you could put in the box. He could cover really well. I mean, when it comes to, like, game comparisons and, you know, football styles, as far as his, you know, his skill set and his frame, he reminds me a lot of Mark Barron, the old Alabama safety/linebacker in the NFL too. You know, someone who was just too slow to play safety, and quick to play linebacker, but just a little bit too small there as well. So he's kind of someone who's gonna have to fill a real niche role for a lot of teams who are looking for somebody who could fill in more of a hybrid role and someone they could use in a couple of different ways here, which is good for him. But I really do think that his height and frame here, because he is a little light, he's listed at 215, but he might be lighter than that. That is kind of what's holding him back at this point here, because honestly, I think he's probably more of a D2 guy. With all that being considered, maybe in the right setting, in the right program, he's an FCS guy. But just right now at 5'11", 215, he's kind of in that weird spot where some teams don't know whether to evaluate him as more of a safety, or as maybe a project player at linebacker. So it's I don't know. I guess in general he's just viewed as more of a project player. Is that fair to say, Kodey?
Yeah, no, I think that is really fair to say about Landon. And yeah, that totally makes sense. And, that Drake offer is interesting, but we could see him, or I could see him personally, maybe getting a little bit more work and refining on the D2 or JUCO level, and then seeing if he can turn up following that.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. I think he needs one more year to just really find out what his role on the next level is. Because on the high school level, we knew he was a great linebacker. That's why he's on this list, obviously. But right now, as far as projecting forward, I think you just really got to commit to trying to fill a specific role on the next level. And we'll just have to see what happens from there. Plain and simple. So there you go there. Kodey, do you have anything else to say before I talk about our number 3 linebacker here?
Nah, I think you could take us down to the south side here, Coach V.
Yes. So our number 3 middle linebacker here in the class of 2024 is Palmer Ridge's Holden Wright, the 6'3", 213-pound athlete. Actually just played in state yesterday against Erie. We are recording this on December 3rd, so there is that. And, Kodey, you told me he played pretty well here. Now, this is a kid that I've watched play football for a really long time. First off, he's one of our OG supporters, so shout out to him. Shout out Palmer Ridge in general. They're one of our OG supporters as a program anyways, and he's one of many Palmer Ridge players who have made our top 5 seniors list because of how many great athletes they continue to produce over there. Now, talking about Holden, let's talk about the things that make him special, starting with his highest grade. I gave him an 8.7 in agility and hip fluidity and an 8.5 in zone coverage. And here's the interesting thing about Holden right here. He originally was a safety, but in the last couple years specifically, this year I think he really committed to it though, he has moved down to linebacker here, And so there's a lot of things that, you just watch him play and it's like, wow, he looks like he can play safety, on this level. And it's because he did. His agility, I think, is the thing that stands out the most. Sideline to sideline, he's great. He's real fluid. Watching him switch directions, he does it pretty seamlessly, honestly, in whatever football situation he's in. And then looking at him as a cover guy in zone, you could just tell that this guy was mentored by Anthony Costanzo, who, by the way, made our top 5 safety list like 2 years ago, right? Who was built pretty similarly at 6'3", 213, 215, by the way. And, you could tell that he mentored him, and he's one of those guys that just knows the passing game, is extremely disciplined. Like Landon Holloway, has great awareness, spatial awareness there. Will bait some guys, will, make the right plays to at least get a pass breakup. And, those safeties instincts have really carried over into his linebacker role here for Palmer Ridge. And he's been very instrumental for that defense and for the run that they're able to go on under a first-year coach nonetheless. So, absolutely love his game. This is a kid, like I said, I've been watching for the last couple of seasons, just watching him develop from a really good safety rotational guy to a guy at linebacker who could pretty much do it all. Stop the run, great against the pass, and just is all over the field, and is somebody whose name is consistently called over and over and over again on those PA systems. Isn't that right, Kodey? And, you saw him play at State. What do you have to say about Holden Wright as far as strengths go?
Holden Wright came to play. There is a lot of things that maybe didn't go right for Palmer Ridge, but I would not say Holden Wright was one of those things that didn't go right. I think that he's somebody who, like you said, is just very athletic, and that pops off pretty immediately when looking at him. I had his agility/hip fluidity at an 8.3, but also his tackling, I have an 8.6 as well. I think that he's a pretty consistent tackler, maybe a little high sometimes, but nothing too bad. And his zone coverage ability, 8.7. He plays the entire field. He's somebody that, he is actually, not one of his highest grades, but he is like my highest graded man coverage football player on this list here just because he's somebody that I can trust to play against slot receivers, running backs, tight ends. It doesn't matter inside or outside, honestly. He's somebody whose agility/hip fluidity and overall speed is, enough to keep up with a lot of those matchups. And, he's somebody who can make them pay if, there's like a size difference where if they try and throw it to some small slot receiver and think that it's a mismatch, Holden will either obliterate them or, make a play on the ball. And he has awesome ball skills as well. He's somebody who excels on the offensive side of the ball as well as a running back. So, I think that plays a little bit into his tenacity and his aggressiveness that he brings to the linebacker position. And, he's somebody who, like I said, came to play against Erie and was not someone that I really wrote off, I should say, in that game. He's somebody who left it all on the field, and, I think that's more than what some of the, other... I don't want to say that they didn't leave it all on the field, but he did not look outclassed, is what I should say, on that field against a team that has a lot of great athletes in that Erie lineup. So, I think that those are things that he did really well. And then something that I think that pops off of his film is his block shedding ability and his pass rush skills. I mean, he has a bag of moves. He's the best hand fighter out of all of these linebackers. He's somebody who can pass rush from the middle. He can play man in the slot, zone inside and out. His instincts allow him to fill lanes really fast. His run defendability, I have at an 8.5. He has a really nice swim move, and I think that a rip maneuver that gets past tackles, guards, and tight ends alike. And, I think that being able to use a variety of moves is what really caught my eye for both getting off of blocks and for getting in the backfield and making plays on the quarterback as well. He's just really fun to watch. And, I think that as far as improvements go, if you don't mind me just transitioning real quickly into that, Coach V, before I toss back over to you for your overall analysis here, I think that he's just somebody that I'd want to see get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. I mean, 6'3", 213, that's not a bad size, but I don't think that he necessarily has the biggest hit power out of anyone on this list. It's actually the lowest out of anyone on this top 5 list. His hit power for me is at a 7.5, and I don't think he's fast enough, but, if he can get just a hair faster, I don't think that would necessarily hurt him. But, I mean, when you have a linebacker that can pass rush, play in the passing game, and fill running lanes, I mean, what else could you possibly want from a linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely agreed. And, before I talk about some of those areas of improvements and whatnot, I do also want to say, as a quarterback spy, he's probably one of the best linebackers at just being a great quarterback spy. I don't know what the numbers look like against Blake Barnett yesterday, Cody, who's obviously a great running quarterback. But against running quarterbacks this season, no running quarterback was really able to get the best out of him. Bryce Reel of Mesa Ridge, who's a pretty athletic quarterback, had 74 yards, which was the most, but that was mostly in garbage time, where Holden Wright wasn't directly, spying on him. And then Gavin Lockett of Pueblo West, somebody who's known to be a great dual threat, only had 31 yards against Holden Wright when he was spying on him. And so, as a quarterback spy, I mean, that's something that's very underrated, especially in modern day football. A lot of quarterbacks are mobile, and so you want to have guys who could go head to head and just straight up shut down those guys, and Holden does a really good job of that. I think that's something that's a very rarely mentioned when talking about run defendability, but wanted to throw that out there because I just definitely forgot. Now, talking about, some of the areas of improvement, I mean, absolutely agreed. I think he can get bigger. Like I said, played safety for a lot of his career. It feels like it was more recently he transitioned full-time more so to linebacker in the box here. But I really do feel like he could put on weight and still be as fast enough to play on the next level and do everything he usually does, and he'll be fine, right? You could probably put on another 20 to 30 pounds at 6'3", 240 and be fine, right? And so with him being as light as he is, that does affect his hit power. Only gave him a 6, which was a low grade for you as well, Cody. It is what it is. I'm not concerned. It's fine. I mean, his brother Saxon, who by the way made this list a couple of years ago, wasn't the biggest hit power guy either. But It is what it is. He does a lot of other things good enough, but would obviously love to see him get stronger there. My lowest grade for him was actually pass rushing skills. Or my second lowest grade, I should say, was pass rushing skills at 7.8. But it is worth noting that 7.8 grade as a pass rusher is the highest grade out of all the linebackers on this top 5 list goes for that specific category. So, it's low, but he still does it at a high level. It showed that he does have a little bit of a bag there. And I think that's just a testament to how well-rounded he is as a player. Honestly, when it comes to linebackers, the only thing you could really criticize is their strength, and their weight. That's not the worst thing, right, Kodey?
No, there's plenty of other problems to have. And like I said, he's somebody who could play in every facet of the game. So, what's there really to whine about here?
Yeah, he's somebody that could pretty much fit any scheme for any coaching staff out there. He's somebody who's still at that 6'3", 213 frame. You could ask him to stay there or maybe even move back down and go back to safety maybe. That could be interesting. Or you could make him more of a pass rusher or whatever. He's really somebody who has a good skill set here, a good base skill set to work with. And honestly, my overall grade for him is an 80.3 here. I think he's an FCS guy at the very least. That's his floor for me at an 80.3. Kodey, what was your overall grade? And, where do you kind of project Holden, and what are some of the interest he's getting from colleges out there at this moment?
Yeah, so for Holden, my final grade for him was an 83.2, which gave the cumulative PMC score of an 81.75 here. And I also think that he's an FCS guy, but when looking at his offers, he currently only appearingly has offers from D2s. That's CSU Pueblo, Black Hills State, and Nebraska Kearney here. But it's really interesting to also note that he has visited Mines. He has, visited Drake, I believe, as well. So talking once again on that FCS level. And, he's been invited out to a game by University of South Dakota. He has some Dartmouth edits. And then most notably to us, he has visited UNCO this past season. And that's really interesting to me because Holden Wright, younger brother of Saxon Wright, who is at Northern Colorado, is something to definitely, I think, take notice of here. And he was kind of in UNCO's backyard. Not quite, but, by playing in state this past week at Canvas Stadium, I would like to think that they do offer him as, once again, as we've discussed, there is an exodus of prospects heading out of UNCO, and that means that there's needs to be filled and roster spots to be filled, and I would absolutely, bend over backwards to have a guy like Holden Wright on our roster, especially, somebody that as the nickel linebacker position is becoming more and more prominent. I feel like he fits the bill of that perfectly. And, I think that he's somebody who honestly could see playing time with his versatility a little bit sooner than later, if I'm being completely honest with you. Everyone, it's safe to always say red shirt and wait, but we've seen more. I think something that I've kind of realized is that, depth is so important on the college football level. And we've seen a lot of the guys that we talk about that, hey, you should probably sit for a year, and they end up getting their number called. And I think that Holden is somebody who can pick up the phone and make some plays as well on the FCS level if he's given that opportunity a little bit sooner than later. What do you think of my analysis on that? Is that brazy to say? And, where do you see his recruiting picking up or maintaining at following, this performance in state?
I don't think it's crazy. I will say this. The number of times we say, oh my God, I wish Northern Colorado would pick him up is probably a lot. And so I don't know if that means a whole lot to some people, but to us, it always means a whole ton. Look, first off, Saxon, his brother, that's a guy who went D2 first, I'm pretty sure, and then transferred over to Northern Colorado. And so here's the thing. If Holden went D2, he will dominate. Give him a defined role, and I think I'm like 90% sure that he would dominate year one. if you give him a defined role if he goes to a D2. Straight up. Like, I think he could be an all-conference guy for a lot of D2s. That's how high I am on Holden right here. Now, if they play around and, they're like, oh, let's be the Arizona Cardinals treating Isaiah Simmons and let's make him play safety even though he's 250 pounds. No, like, you can't tell him to do one thing and then he's going to do another one during the regular season. You got to give him a defined role as a young player, right, playing on the next level. But if he does have a defined role, I think he's going to be fine. On the D1 level, I agree. I think he can find playing time pretty easy there. But like I said, it has to be a defined role, because I think the thing with coaches that, how should I say this, that in my opinion I'm pretty critical of, is that when it comes to freak athletes who are like 6'3", moves well, have a great skill set, some coaches are a little bit too confident in who they are, and they'll ask those freak athletes to do something that's maybe not outside of their skill set, but is too much from a mental capacity standpoint for them to take. And that's what ruins great players like that, who have a great skill set and who have great athleticism. So I want to make sure I put that out there and be abundantly clear about what I'm meaning there. But if you give him a defined role, I agree. I think he could be a very much an immediate impact guy right away on a lot of football teams, from D2 for sure to FCS. Now, if there's any Group of 5 or Power 5 guys that are looking at him, I think he's probably more of a project guy. Like, give him 2 or 3 years and he could be a really good starter to rotational guy for you, right? But I really do think he belongs on this D1 level here at the very least. And yeah, would love to see Northern Colorado get him, but also wouldn't be surprised if you saw maybe someone like a Montana or a Montana State, who are known for taking great athletes with great frames and making them into borderline NFL players and, being super successful and making the playoffs every year. I wouldn't be surprised if a program like that looks at Holden Wright and they're like, man, we got to have him on the team. So that's kind of where I stand right now. Obviously, would love to see him reunited with Saxon at Northern Colorado, but I really think the sky's the limit for him. Just the athleticism and skill set. This is just not something you see every day. Plain and simple.
Yeah, no, 100%. Must have, honestly. And I also want to echo what you say. We do say this guy'd be a good fit at UNC. I'd say a decent amount of the time, but also there's guys that have been on the roster that maybe we don't want on the roster as well before. So don't think that we just want anybody. We want people that we think are going to help UNC become a relevant football school. So, and Holden Wright is, I think, a culture guy who could accomplish that, and be a phenomenal athlete that could help accomplish that. And, the Big Sky has their eyes on him. So hopefully, that doesn't slip through. But Coach V, you mind if I talk about this next guy that we have up that is a Power 5 commit, actually?
Yeah, go for it. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. And man, was this highlight reel something else to watch. And we're talking about the Douglas County High School linebacker who's been committed for some time, honestly, to Kansas State. And that is Jake Stonebreaker here. He's a lunatic, honestly. He plays like an explosion, I think is a great way to describe his playing style, because, man, he is bodacious and he will just ruin whatever you try and have going on here. And honestly, his second lowest grade for me is still an 8. So that just tells you the kind of player that Stonebreaker is here out of Douglas County. And, I think that I'm just going to run into this here. He's somebody who uses great anticipation, acceleration, and agility to consistently make plays in the backfield. He's a threat in both pass rushing off the edge and on delayed or time blitzes up the middle. And, his embracing of contact makes him hard to block for running backs, and he has strong hands for disengaging with blocks as well. I think that, he's somebody who tackles at a good pad level and can drop the hammer when necessary, while also having patience and discipline playing in his zone when assigned. So with all of those things kind of in mind, what does that translate to score-wise? Well, His top end speed is actually his highest score for me, as well as agility/hip fluidity at an 8.7 and an 8.5 respectively. He's somebody who plays all over the field and can play sideline to sideline, and also end zone to end zone, if you catch my drift. I mean, he's somebody who takes great angles, and I think that translates as well into his tackling that is graded at an 8.5. And then block shedding ability, look, I have him rated at an 8.4 here because, like I said, he's not afraid of contact, and so if a running back really tries to pass block him, he will just bull rush through them, and that same mentality, that same, drive, and that same he's insane, honestly, and that's what you want out of a linebacker, and I think that is, one of the biggest things that has separated him from linebackers that we've evaluated in the past is if I put Jake Stonebreaker into a helmet and told him to run through a literal brick wall, honestly, the thickness of the brick is what I'm more worried about if it's going to be able to stop him than his mentality, his will, or his physicality. He is just a dog, honestly. And, guards, tackles, centers, beware. If he's running at you full speed, he will pop you and set you off balance and, get into that backfield and make some serious plays. You could see, honestly, even through helmets and face masks, you can see the terror in quarterbacks' eyes whenever he is in the backfield chasing them down, and does make them a little bit frantic. And his hurries and pressures do translate into turnovers for this defense. And I think that Stonebreaker was honestly the key here for Douglas County to squeak into the playoffs here in a very tough league. And, he held his own in some interesting matchups and was somebody who was constantly double teamed, which is another reason why his block shedding ability had to be so strong, is because he was an area of focus for opposing coaches and they tried to shut him out, and he still found a way to squeeze back into the game plan here. So, Coach V, what do you think of the lunatic out of Douglas County here? And I'm saying this all endearingly, by the way, because, isn't that a trait that you want out of your linebackers, to be a little unhinged?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I got to do my best Chris Collinsworth impression here, because here's a guy that you want on your football team, man. And also, shout out 6-0 Academy. If there is anybody from 6-0 Academy, non-lineman, from 6-0 Academy that really embodies what Matt McChesney's about, it's Jake Stonebreaker. I feel like, at least when watching him play on the football field, if Matt McChesney was 5 inches shorter and probably 100 pounds less, he would probably be Jake Stonebreaker, honestly, because he just plays nasty, and you gotta love the energy he brings. And just in general, I'm trying to remember back here the first time we watched him play, because Kodey, you and I did watch him play together one time, and I'll always remember this, Castleview 2 years ago. He was a sophomore playing in that big time game with AJ Jackson and company, man. The crowd was rocking. We had to sneak in there, but the crowd was rocking, and he made an impact as one of the lead tacklers with 7 tackles in a game where they won 16-0 and broke a almost decade-long streak of losing to Castleview. And so he's probably one of those legends, honestly, like Colorado high school football history legend here, where, he's been part of a squad. He's led squads that have beat Castleview, and for Douglas County to do that, that's absolutely huge. That's a great rivalry, the Battle of the Rock. And for them to do that for the first time ever, beating them 2 times in a row, that's huge. This year they didn't beat him, though, but it was obviously close, and he brings a lot of energy when he plays. Now, all that history aside, let's talk about him as a player. I'm only going to mention these 2, his highest rated categories right now, but I gave him a 9 for tackling. He's a sure tackler, right? And when he tackles you, you feel it too. He's real physical. He'll get in there. Sure tackler, pretty disciplined, takes great angles, does a good job all around there. So love that. He's a 9 for sure. Hit power, gave him an 8.7. The way he's just able to flip dudes and fold dudes is different. Nobody else, in my opinion, can hit like Jake Stonebreaker of Douglas County. And for him to do that at 6'1", 215, by the way, is scary. Because imagine him doing that at 240 or 250, right? It'd be insane. It'd be absolutely insane. And then everything else is kind of the same here. I don't want to take too much time talking about it, but he's just a great all-around athlete. 8.6 speed, agility, 8.5 zone coverage. You know, he's a menace over the middle. He's a great athlete who plays physical football, and he sets the tone. Now, with that being said, Kodey, do you mind if I talk about some of the things I think he could improve on here?
Take it away.
It's not many. It's honestly not many. Gave him a 7 for man coverage ability and 7.5 for pass rush. Let me talk about man coverage more so, because I think this is pretty, solvable. I don't know. I think this is not that big a deal. But I gave him a 7, not because he can't keep up with guys in main coverage, but because he's just really grabby. He reminds me a lot of, just a very aggressive corner, that is physical with you and is going to be annoying and in your face, but they're just super grabby. And on the next level, there's a lot of grabbing and stuff that's just not going to fly if you're playing linebacker. And so I would love to see him be a little bit more hands-off, do a little bit more film work when watching his assignments that he has to cover and knowing, okay, these are the routes they're running, so I don't have to grab him because I have the spatial awareness of knowing where they're going to be at next, right? And so would love to see him continue to work on that. That's probably my biggest concern. Other than that, pass rushing skills, gave him a 7.5. He did rush off the edge, and he made people pay when they didn't block for him, but just didn't get to see him put a lot of hands on tackles and get to hand fight a lot. But from what I did see, it looks solid enough. I mean, I gave him a 7.5. That's still the second highest out of anyone on this list here. This top 5 list, that is. Holden Wright with a 7.8, just 0.3 ahead of him. So I still like it. But, I would love to see him continue to pass rush better. And I think also if he gets stronger, he's able to throw guys a little bit more. And that'll go a long way as far as pass rushing goes, combining a little bit more strength with speed that he already has there. Which I think is doable, because I did give him an 8.5 for block shedding ability. I think when he gets into a lineman, he makes it really difficult for them to block him. And so just coming off that edge, I would just like to see him become a little bit more refined here. Use a little bit more strength, right? Get a little bit more stronger, use a little bit more strength here. And not have to go, the long way around, just trying to run around a guy. Because I think on this level, it works. On the next level, you got to get used to going through guys, plain and simple. Is that fair to say, Kodey?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And he could develop a bit of a bigger bag to go hand in hand with his physicality and become, just a more versatile threat. There's nothing wrong with that, ever. But do you want me to talk about or just kind of echo the other parts here? His man coverage ability, I had graded at a 6.8 just because we don't see it a whole ton. But I also don't think with his athleticism, discipline, and speed that it's something that he can't do. So honestly, I would love to see him just be used in even more versatile ways here on the next level, as he does make his way to K-State. And man, what a commitment here. Also, shout out K-State here. They quietly have been recruiting Colorado football pretty damn well for the past, I want to say, decade or so. And they continue that by getting some of the top recruits in this class. So for sure, shout out them. But Coach V, what do you think his path to the playing field kind of looks like for K-State? Your overall grade of an 83.3, my overall grade of an 81.9, and our composite score of an 82.6. This is a bona fide 3-star guy here with very little to critique. And I think that the things that, we are a little critical on, or a bit more on the criticizing side of, are maybe not things that he's bad at so much as he's necessarily just unproven at. Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even know if he's going to have to use all that on the next level for K-State. Because, here's the thing. I'm just going to be honest. I don't watch K-State like that. So I have no idea what their defensive scheme is. I know he is listed as an outside linebacker technically on 24/7 Sports, which makes me believe that he's more of a 4-3 outside linebacker than anything. And so I'm kind of assuming that's the role he's going to play with Kansas State. We'll see, though. Like I said, I'm not a K-State fan. Hook 'em. So I'm just gonna put that out there right now. Hook 'em. So with that being said, I think first off, quickest way to the field is through special teams, because I think he's a great special teams player. It only takes him to lay out one dude for him to really, start getting his name out there and start getting noticed a little bit more here. And I think he's willing to do that dirty work and go play special teams and be a menace out there, plain and simple. But it really just kind of depends how they use him here, and what their scheme is over there. I feel like he needs to put on at least 15 more pounds, 10 to 15 more pounds to get to 230. That is to play more of that, 4-3 linebacker role over there. Because most likely they're going to ask him to cover a little bit more here. Now, if he's a 3-4 outside linebacker, which would be really interesting, I think he's going to have to put on at least 30 more and aim to get to 240. But that's, I don't know. I just don't really see that happening. But even then, he'd be more of a 3-4 inside linebacker than anything. And I would probably rather have him still get to that 240 spot even then, because you never know, right? And so I think it just depends the scheme and whatnot. But regardless, we'll love to see him put on weight. It's probably, he's going to redshirt, I would assume, probably. And then even then, I could see maybe a year or two more before he really gets in there, and gets going. It just really depends, For all I know, maybe he stars as a special teamer as a freshman, and then he becomes a rotational guy as a sophomore, right? But it just really depends on who they have coming in there and, where they see him schematically. Does that make sense, Kodey?
Yeah, no, they honestly have like a couple of options, I think. So it's going to be up to how they make this decision and also horns down. But anyways, I think that, he's going to have opportunities to prove himself with his speed and his physicality. I think that, a lot of things that we worry about for next level players is will they be able to take on when will they be able to take on the physicality of the next level? And I just don't have that question mark about Jake Stonebreaker. So honestly, I could see him seeing the field a little bit sooner rather than later. And as you and I know, the Big 12 is going to look very, very different here sooner than later as well. And maybe that presents some more opportunities to match up with teams that just look a little bit differently than maybe what we've seen in the Big 12 before. So, I think he's in a great spot, and, I think that he's very, very deserving of this number 2 linebacker spot on this top 5 list. So, that's my view on Jake Stonebreaker. Simon, do you have any other notes to add on before I go through this, per usual, extensive list of honorable mentions?
I just want to echo that I'm not concerned about his physicality either. The putting on weight thing is more of a schematic thing, in my opinion. Situation thing, in my opinion, because, you never know, right? Some guys, some defensive coordinators or strength and conditioning coaches, like their linebackers to be a little bit more beefy, right? Or a little bit more leaned up, but still, weighing 230. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I'm not saying he needs to put on weight because he can't handle the physicality. I think he can. It's just a very situational thing over there. And, there's honestly no way I could possibly know where these coaches' mindsets are from as far as scheming and stuff goes, specifically for Stonebreaker. So there you go. And I think most people wouldn't be able to know anyways. But, yeah, Kodey, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of our honorable mentions? Per usual, there's always a bunch, especially at linebacker. So go for it.
Yeah, so some of the guys that I think needed a little, or I'd say are maybe 2 JUCO years away, but were worth looking at just based off of numbers. Were guys like Will Knox, Avery DeWeese, Trevor Nordstrom. Some of those guys. And then there's some D2 guys for sure. When I look at a guy like Jake Tapia or, I know that on the next level, Eli Frakes out of Legend, he's going to be looked at more at a safety kind of build anyway. Jake Howell is committed to Iowa for wrestling, so not worth really investigating that too much further. Omari Bursey is a really good dude. Braden Larimer was fun to watch. Blake Westland out of Green Mountain. Jonathan Nieto-Villa from Castleview, speaking of that Battle of the Rock, he's another guy who, impressed as well. Cole Gaddis committed to Mines. Blake Bronham, definitely D2 level guys here who I think can shine on that level of football. And then, I think that our next tier up of those guys knocking on that D1 opportunity are guys like who barely missed the list, like Caden Stansberry out of Loveland here. And then also Columbine's premier defender, James Sillison, for that squad. He's a solid linebacker who just also narrowly missed out on this list. But Coach V, this number 1 linebacker is somebody who has been playing for also the majority of his playing career and actually was coached by a friend of the pod. Isn't that right? Former member of the pod even.
It is. Also, I wanted to shout out the honorable mentions as well. A lot of great players there. Cole Gaddis, Sillison from Columbine. Really love his game. Honestly, I just think as far as athleticism goes, he's not quite there. Maybe a JUCO year away though. So we'll see about that. But just wanted to make sure I made that clear. Also, Caden Stansberry was technically my number 5 linebacker. Really love his game. He plays really well with a lot of energy. So just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, well, that being said though, Kodey, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce our number 1 linebacker because you just happen to know the guy who has coached him in middle school, right?
Yes, sir. And shout out to Coach Austin, still doing his thing on the middle school and elementary school levels. So keep building them up the way that you have so that they can turn out to be out like this stud, Angelo Petridis out of Cherry Creek here, our number 1 linebacker in the class of 2024. And you want to talk about a Swiss Army knife. Holy crap, this guy is him. So let's talk about some of the categories that I have rated high. Look, his zone coverage ability, I have it at a 9. His agility/hip fluidity, also at a 9.1. I mean, this guy has multiple 4/5-star traits, and these two definitely spearhead them. He just, since a freshman, has been seeing playing time for this Cherry Creek squad. He has won 3 state championships, and, he's been kind of the heart and soul of that defense that has seen a lot of talent come and go. But, I mean, he has made the most of his opportunities, between playing with a very talented defensive front for 2 of his, 3 championships. And, the defensive line has still been talented for him, but then taking a step forward, I would even say this senior season and making more plays in the backfield was very, very important and also critical to his run defendability for, being rated at an 8.7 for me. He's somebody who is a complete linebacker. He has a great feel for the game. He flows with players from zone to zone, and he punishes pass catchers in his zones with devastating hits to force incompletions, which, is a part of his hit power at an 8.5, but his zone coverage ability, I mean, you have to know the timing of the route and stuff to be able to time those hits and force those incompletions. I also want to mention that I have seen him play man coverage in person and know he's capable of making big stops when it matters. So that's why his man coverage is at an 8.2. And, he has athleticism to keep up with certain receivers and plenty of tight ends in man and not have to worry about it. He does a good job of sliding off of blocks and timing his blitzes, so in that regard, his block shedding is sitting at a solid 8 for me. Nothing too crazy, but I mean, guys really can't keep their hands on him for a super long time. He's also fast playing sideline to sideline, which is why his speed's at an 8.6. And at 6'2", 225, his frame is, the heaviest frame on this list, and he moves really, really well at that size. So I have no doubt that as he continues to bulk up a little bit, that he's not going to lose out on a lot when, playing on that next level. Coach V, a ton to like here about Petridis, who we have had the pleasure of watching since we first started covering high school football here in the state of Colorado. So, and I also want to just say shout out to him. We got to talk at Media Day, which was, as of this recording, the prior Tuesday, November 28th, I want to say that was. And so, he was very appreciative of, the love that we've given him. But I told him that he's earned all of this by being that guy in the middle of that defense and for being the versatile playmaker that he is. Coach V, I'm sure that sentiment is echoed by yourself here at the pod as well as some of these scores in addition to that.
Yeah, man. Angelo, first off, the homie, he's been rocking with us for a minute, but I am just going to say this. From the moment, or I shouldn't say from the moment, from the season he started at middle linebacker for Cherry Creek back at his sophomore year, right, Kodey, a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure that's when he first was like the starter there at middle linebacker. From that moment, I always felt like Angelo Petridis was the best linebacker in Colorado, hands down. And there's no question. Like, there are seniors that were ahead of him, and, they put up their numbers and stuff, and that's good. But Angelo Petridis was special, and we knew that from his sophomore year on. And he has just continued to get better and better and better, which is absolutely insane, honestly, just looking back at it. How much he's improved, and just looking at where he started and whatnot. I mean, he was special from the get-go. He was special, and I will say this, he hasn't made any of our all-PMC stuff or end-of-the-year awards because, he's in a stacked defense and whatnot. Doesn't exactly stuff the sheet when you have so many other guys who are great making plays there. But we have always known, just watching him and, just seeing him ball out, that he was special and that he's the number one linebacker in Colorado, bar none, regardless of class and classification as well. And that has always been apparent, and that's apparent right now, and that's apparent with these ratings. I gave him a 9 for tackling, sure tackler, hits hard, great angles. Gave him a 9 for agility, hip fluidity. He is more fluid than a lot of safeties and DBs that we have evaluated over the years. I'd probably say at least more fluid than 70% of 70% of DBs in this state already, in my opinion. Gave him a 9.2 for zone coverage. Like I said, already better than 70% of the DBs that have come through the state this last couple of years. He plays zone better than a lot of DBs, which is absolutely insane. His spatial awareness from the time he was a sophomore to now has only gotten better, and he will continually bait quarterbacks, and it's gotten to the point where quarterbacks will just not look his way at all, and they will just look the other way rather than even throw in his vicinity, because they know that Angelo Petridis is lurking around, and he has hands too. He could catch. He has some good soft hands there where he could catch the ball, and he could house it too. You saw that a lot his sophomore year, and, teams figured it out, and they're like, hey, let's not throw an automatic pick six to that linebacker over there because he's going to make a play, right? And that's how good he is. And so those are his highest ratings. I mean, agreed with everything you said, Kodey. He's an athletic freak, great in coverage against the run. He does a good job as well. I also gave him a 9 against the run here. He knows when he needs to initiate contact with a lineman and hold his ground before block shedding, and he block sheds relatively well there. I mean, there's just not much you could really criticize here. So pass rushing skills, gave him a 6.5. Here's the thing, he's just not utilized a lot there. When you got guys like Blake Purchase, oh my God, how come I can't think of the one from last year that was a power rusher? Chase Brackney, and more. So many other guys, Ashton Shepardson, from this year, Perea as well. When you play with so many pass rushers, you don't really need to do that. And he doesn't. Now, as a blitzer, he's dangerous, he's quick, he's fast, he's going to get in there. I like his block shedding ability, so if you really wanted to, you could ask him to pass rush. But kind of like Jake Stonebreaker, I just don't know. I don't know. Or not Jake Stonebreaker. Well, Jake Stonebreaker, but more so Holden Wright. I don't know if that's the best use of his skills and abilities on the field. I think he's somebody that you got to keep in the middle. He's going to play the run. He could also quarterback spy. He could play coverage as well and do a really good job there. So there you go there. That's really the only downside. Height and frame, I gave him an 8.5. He is listed at 6'2", 224. Now, do I personally believe he's at 224? I wouldn't be surprised if he was 10 pounds, less, but even then, he'd still be like 6'2", 215, and he's been playing at that, all, I feel like since his sophomore year, So I'm not super concerned about that. I think he could put on weight and be at a healthy playing weight of 230, 240 on the next level and be a great football player on that level. What do you think about that, Kodey?
Yeah, no, Coach V, I definitely agree that, the need to pass rush, it definitely hasn't been there. And so that's also my lowest category here at a 7. But, I think that with everything else that he does really, really well, and I think that, if he shows the strength to get off of blockers that are guards or tackles, I'm sure that can translate as well to pass rush if necessary. And like you said, he's a dangerous blitzer as well. So, I think that in the traditional sense, he can impact the game, in every facet that you need him to. And that's kind of all that matters, honestly. And the fact that he's not restricted to just playing within the box and playing, sideline to sideline and end zone to end zone means a lot as well. The only disagreement I would say that we've really had on this episode is I was just a little bit picky about his tackling. He's a very sure tackler and he takes great angles, so I do want to agree with that. And, this is why we have 2 different people grading as well. I just think that he's a little too high compared to where I want him to be on a consistent basis. So, that's my biggest qualm with him, but his tackling is still sitting at a 7.8, which is more than enough to succeed on the next level, especially with everything that he does, like, beyond average, you know what I mean? So I think that those are all great reflections of him, and I think that he has some interesting offers here that kind of reflect on what he's capable of on the next level. And I even think that he's a little underrated, to be completely honest here. Because I know that he has looks from the likes of, he's at least been invited out by K-State as well. So that's something else to kind of take into consideration. But his most recent ones have been University of Louisville, Tulsa, and Lindenwood, which is a pretty interesting spread here. He's also, received an offer from Washington State, which is awesome, and Fresno State. So obviously he's a D1 linebacker is the easy way to take a look at it. He also has edits and whatnot from K-State as well as KU, and an offer there as well. So, what is there to not like about Angelo Petridis and even some of the looks that he's getting on the next level?
I mean, yeah, he's a great player. I also want to say this, in the state championship game, I know they lost Kodey, but he still played pretty well, didn't he?
Yeah, no, I mean, he came to play, and I mean, he was filling lanes and playing really well, and I think that he was somebody who was really focused on his assignments for that game, and, that's what I want to add on there, is it's not like they were like, all right, we're going to attack Angelo Petridis here. That was not their game plan there. And he is somebody that, in order to minimize his impact on the game, pretty consistently had like 2 guys kind of up in his grill, even 3 guys sometimes that they were loading at him. So they weren't targeting him in like a weakness perspective. They were focusing him on a let's try and minimize what he's doing perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think that's worth noting in case there, are any colleges out there that looked at that score and were like, oh, I don't know, against a team that can't pass, could only run, that's a little concerning. But he did his thing, right? Even when they keyed in on him. And so that just shows how unstoppable he is. Now, talking about his college, interests here, I mean, he's a D1 guy, plain and simple. I got to bring it up, but CU did re-offer him. As in Coach Prime, CU re-offered him, Kodey. And I'm going to be honest, if I'm Deion Sanders and I'm that coaching staff over there, I would be begging for Angelo Petridis and throwing all the NIL money possible at him to get him to go to CU. Because they need him arguably the most out of any big-time program out there. Is that not fair to say, Kodey?
I mean, look, they're moving into the Big 12 here, and those teams can throw it around the yard, as could teams in the Pac-12 as well, as evidenced by this past season. And you need a linebacker that you like. Angelo Petridis is the kind of guy that if you're taking him off the field, I would be worried. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if he's hopping off the field, we're vulnerable right now. And to have a player that you want to have on the field that much, I think that makes it really important. Also, you look at some of the other teams that are looking at him, like a Kansas State, like a Kansas, and it's like, oh my God, if we have to throw against him and he makes plays against us, I'm going to be kicking myself in the rear just a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think there are some pretty serious ties to Kansas, in my opinion, and that would be a bad game to lose if he goes off against you. But, regardless, he's a Power 5 guy. I don't want to project too far in the future, but I could see maybe NFL if he puts on more weight and is able to carry that weight really well. I think he could be that guy, potentially, And he's somebody who could get playing time really quickly, honestly. So we'll just have to see. But Angelo Petridis, he could do it all. He's been doing it all, and he's the modern day linebacker that you want for your team if you're a college program or if you're really any football team. So there you go there. I feel like this was a pretty easy number one. Was it not, Kodey?
This has kind of been years in the making, to be 100% honest. So yeah, it was pretty easy. And obviously the offers don't always reflect the talent, but for this instance, it definitely does, as far as being a Power 5 guy and, getting all the looks that he has. And, I think that he's a great crowning of the class of 2024, which, to review, the PMC top 5 linebackers in the class of 2024 goes as followed in ascending order, with AJ Guida from Mullen committed to Northern Illinois at our number 5 spot with a 78.65 score. Landon Holloway with some interest here with a 79.15 score at our number 4 spot. Holden Wright with a handful of D2 offers and D1 visits at our number 3 spot at 81.75. Jake Stonebreaker, the Kansas State commit, at our number 2 spot with an 82.6. And last but not least, actually the most here, is Angelo Petridis at an 84.4 composite score and plenty of opportunities. And we're very excited to see, obviously, where all these guys go. But I think it does hit just a little bit more home here with the fact that, we know the guy that coached him on the youth level. And, it just makes it a little bit more special, I think, to have watched him over the past few years and see all of his playing time and see what he's grown and developed into. And,
that really goes for all of these guys. A lot of these guys we were able to watch since they were sophomores. Holden Wright, Jake Stonebreaker. Holloway is somebody who, more so came onto the scene as a junior. Guida, we didn't really get to see as much, but he knew he was around, and so just being able to see some of these guys grow and continue to get better and develop into the players they are is always pretty special here. And with a guy like Angelo Petridis kind of crowning it all off here, a great linebacker group, arguably. Yeah, I'd probably say this might be the best linebacker group from Colorado that we've done. Middle linebacker group, that is.
I'd have to double check through the scores, but I think that on the top end, it's very top heavy at least. And all these guys getting, D1 looks at the bare minimum is something that we haven't been able to say of every single linebacker group. So, I think that is important to note as well. This was the class of 2024 is one of the interesting and maybe most polarizing classes that we have covered in our 4 years of evaluating graduating classes. And it's been a fun one to watch from beginning to end. It's our first class to have witnessed them as freshmen and, those who did play as freshmen and watch their entire careers unfold. So this class will always kind of have a special place in my heart as far as evaluations, just because it is the one that we've seen all the way through.
Agreed. And with that being said, that'll basically wrap up this episode. Make sure you check out all of our other ones at Playmakers Corner. show some love on social media, where you can find us at Playmakers Corner on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, where we will be posting all our content and have posted a lot of our content there before, from recaps to end of the year awards to more of these top 5 seniors lists, which we will begin to crank out here in December and January. So make sure you tune in for those. We'll be doing that 2 episode a week type deal here, which should be a whole ton of fun. But with that being said, I've been one of your co-hosts, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V.
And I've been the other one, Cody Stoffer.
And we'll see you on the next episode.